What is going on, Patriots Nation? This is Jace back with another edition of the Patriots Draft Podcast. Today, I'm doing my first full round mock draft. We're going to be joined by NFL Draft Geek _ on Instagram. Runs a great page if you guys are into the draft talk. Follow him. Make sure you guys follow him on Instagram, and then you guys can stay up to date with more of all the draft prospects. But make sure you guys like, subscribe, comment. Let us know down below who you would pick for the Patriots, what you changed about the draft. Without further ado, let's get right into the video. Real quick, guys, we'd like to thank today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. With Underdog's NFL Pick'em, they make it super easy to win big on any given night. They have individual player props or daily fantasy and are legal in 41 of the 50 states. Right now, they are doubling your first deposit up to $100 when you use code PATSDRIVE or use the link in the description. All you have to do is select higher or lower and submit your wager for as low as $1 to win anywhere from 3 times to 20 times your money. You can also compete against thousands in Underdog Fantasy's daily fantasy tournaments ranging anywhere from football to baseball to basketball. Whatever sport it is, there's a tournament for you. Now with Underdog's Pick'em Insurance, you can still win money even if one of your picks does not hit. So head over to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the Underdog app. Make sure to use code PATCHDRIVE or use the link in our description to get started today. All right, now we're going to jump into a full first-round mock draft. First one, the end of the college football regular season, so we will do all 32 picks as the order stands today after this week of the NFL. So I'm joined here with NFL Draft Geek _ on Instagram. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to have you on, guys. If you don't follow him, make sure you go follow him on Instagram. Again, that's NFL Draft Geek _ He does great stuff with big boards. He even covers college football. So if you guys want to follow a little bit more draft related content than just Patriots, you can also go follow him on Instagram. So we will jump right into this. We're gonna go alternating picks. I'll do the odds. He's gonna do the evens. So we'll kind of jump into this. He will get a pick for some teams. He'll get a pick for my Patriots, and we'll kind of get to hear what he wants to do with them. So draft order is set here before the Monday Night Football game today against the Bengals and Jaguars, but it's pretty much set at the top of the order. You got the Bears at 1 because of the Panthers, the Patriots at 2, the Cardinals at 3, the Commanders at 4, and then the Bears again at 5 with their own pick. So we'll alternate. I'll go odds. He's going even. So without question here, first pick, I'm going to go Caleb Williams. I think that there's really no doubt if the Bears are getting the number 1 pick. I know this isn't their pick, but it's from Carolina, but they're still picking at number 5. They don't have the luxury of getting Caleb Williams or Drake May with, their pick at 5. But they have the luxury because of the trade they made last year with Carolina for Bryce Young to still have the number 1 overall pick. I think that would indicate it's time to move on from Justin Fields, probably time to fire Eberflus at head coach and just start over and kind of get a new regime in here. And you don't really get a generational talent like Caleb Williams. Yeah, they traded up for Justin Fields a couple years ago, but he wasn't the number 1 overall pick. They weren't trading up for Trevor Lawrence, or they weren't trading up for Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. They have a chance to get the number 1 quarterback or the pick of the litter if they want Drake May. So I think they're going to make a quarterback change, and I think they're going to go with Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I think as hard as it might be for Bears fans or the Bears organization to say, like, hey, we got to move on from Justin Fields. The clock is ticking on Ryan Poles, and he's got to go get his guy, I think. And if they're at 1, it's going to be a tough sell to the ownership there, I think, if he says, hey, let's trade back, give me another year to get my guy in a draft class that's kind of looking unknown for 2025 right now. So I think it'd be a good move if they end up with the first pick, and it looks like it's going to end up that way to go get Caleb Williams. I think at number 2, it's an interesting spot for New England. Nobody's really used to this, and they're just kind of going to be, if I was New England, I'm waiting to see which QB gets to me. And it's Caleb if the Bears were to go Marvin Harrison or trade it up. So I'm going to go Drake May. while I do think Caleb Williams is the better player, I actually have these two graded pretty close. And I don't think any of them are like, oh, this is like, you know, unbelievable prospect, like can't miss. They each have their own set of issues. And I think Caleb Williams, you know, sometimes plays a little bit of hero ball sometimes. Sometimes when he doesn't need to get out of structure, he does. And the out of the pocket throws under pressure are kind of taking a dip this year. And then Drake May, sometimes accuracy gets spotty, gets a little happy feet, sometimes wants to leave the pocket a little too early. But all of those things are fixable. These are really good prospects, really good arms. Both can do things with their legs. And I think Drake May, whether it's Bill or not in New England, I think he can kind of kickstart what we're looking for the new era Patriots after they've really struggled this season.
Yeah, I love the Drake May pick. We were talking about it before we got into this, and I think Caleb Williams is the better player, like you said, but some of the things concern me, you know, wanting to own a franchise, you know, the painting the nails, the making fun of Max Duggan stuff. It's just, there's a little bit of issues, you know, not so much off the field, but just, I question leadership, stuff like that. And I feel like Drake May is just as good of a talent or as a prospect. He just is getting pushed behind Caleb Williams because of how good Caleb Williams has been and stuff. And plus Drake May isn't on one of the biggest, you know, teams in the in college football in South Carolina or in Southern California, USC. And, you know, he was a huge deal when he went to Oklahoma. He was there, starts over who did he end up starting over? Why am I drawing a blank?
Spencer Rattler.
Spencer Rattler, right? And Spencer Rattler's the number one recruit then. And then, you know, he comes in and has a great year. Then he follows Lincoln Riley, right? Like Caleb Williams has been the headline of college football for 2, if not 3 years. Yeah. So it's kind of pushed Drake May down, and he's played on a very good North Carolina team the last couple of years. They struggled this year, but like you said, he's got that frame. He's 6'4". He's a little bigger than Caleb. He kind of looks like Justin Herbert, where, you know, just a big booming arm. So I'm fine with taking Drake May here and losing out on Caleb Williams. I think that either of them are obviously going to be better than what the Patriots have. So just getting a new quarterback in there, I just hope that they are able to figure out the problems with the offensive line through free agency or get him another playmaker. Because if not, I'm just worried that it's just going to turn into another Mac Jones situation where he doesn't really have any opportunity to succeed. So that's what scares me about that situation. But moving on to number 3, the Arizona Cardinals. I actually think the Cardinals are in a great spot here, even though they won last week and fell down one pick, because I think Kyler Murray's still good. I think that he's shown enough to give Cardinals fans, you know, hope that, hey, maybe his contract's not super bad because he's still playing at that high level. He can run, he can throw it. I'm giving him an elite weapon. They lost DeAndre Hopkins. I think you go out and give him Marvin Harrison Jr., and they drafted Paris Johnson last year. They're going to have another pick coming up in the first round because they got the trade with Houston last year. So they're going to have a second first-round pick here. You go give them probably the best and most talented player in this class and a generational wide receiver also at pick 3. I think Arizona has a lot to look forward to, and Kyler Murray's probably like, heck yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, I think Arizona does have a lot to look forward to, just like you mentioned. And I think it's kind of funny because under first-year head coach Jonathan Gannon for the first 8 games, it's kind of, I mean, everybody knows the guy's a little corny. And it's like, yeah, maybe he'll be on his way out as a 1-year placeholder. And all of a sudden, Arizona's kind of clicking with Kyler back. And by the way, with Dobbs, they had a bad record, but they were kind of a good-looking team. They beat Dallas, hung with Baltimore, hung with a couple other teams. The Giants needed a crazy comeback when we kind of thought the Giants weren't what they are now. And of course, they've had injuries. So I really like getting Kyler Murray a weapon like that. You remember, he's got a big contract already in place. So it's not like they're going to have to pay him now and kind of restructure the team. That's already happened. And so you get somebody, by the way, they have 2 really good receivers, in my opinion. They're just very similar in kind of archetype, where it's Hollywood Brown, Rondale Moore. And so you get a bigger guy, more of an X receiver, prototypical number 1 with Marvin Harrison, who is my number 1 overall prospect in this draft. And I think having him for Arizona would be an absolutely amazing pick at 3.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that's just dominated college football the last couple of years, and he's been on probably one of the he slowed down just because of the Kyle McCord struggles. But
Yeah.
when he was with CJ Stroud, this dude was unstoppable. And there were even times this year, like in the Penn State game, where you're like, oh, Ohio State needs to do something. Who'd they go to? Marvin Harrison Jr. He couldn't be stopped.
Yeah.
So I agree. I have him as my second prospect, but he could easily move up within the next 2 or 3 months, through the combine process and stuff.
Yeah. And if you're taking positional value into account, I definitely think he's 2 or 3, but
Yeah,
I just straight up ball player. I like him
sure.
the best. Moving on to number 4. I was kind of down to 3 players here for Washington, and that's the 2 tackles in this draft who I think are really similar, and then Brock Bowers. But ultimately, I'm going to go with Fashanu here. I just think that the Commanders really need to focus in up front. Sam Howell, while I don't know if he's going to be their future quarterback, he's definitely fine to be their quarterback right now, because I'm of the mindset where if you're not going to go get a guy that I think is going to go win you a Super Bowl, there's no point in really investing in somebody, especially with the 4th overall pick. Howell's been just fine. He's up there with the tops of the league leaders in passing yards. And I think Fashanu is the best pass blocker in this draft. And while I think sometimes he has lapses in the run game where Joe Alt doesn't, I just really like his frame, his build, his athleticism a little bit better. But they're really 1A, 1B for me. You could go either way with Alt or Fashanu. And why I didn't go with Bowers is I think you can get a veteran tight end that's going to help out a young quarterback. And while Bowers is a really, really good prospect, Sam Howell has been sacked over and over and over and over. And I think while Washington's going to try to mold this offense into something that they can plug in a really nice young quarterback into, whether it's the 25 or 26 draft or free agency, I think this current situation on their offense is not a good place to succeed. And so I think that they're going to have to take a step in changing that.
Yeah, and if you look at who the most sacked quarterback in the NFL is, it's Sam Howell by 14. He's been sacked 58 times so far this year. So yeah, he leads the league in passing yards and stuff like that, but he's also getting hit a ton. And I think Olu Fashanu could have been a top tackle last year. There was kind of surprised when he stayed at Penn State. So, getting him on this Commanders team and letting Sam Howell see if, they can bolster up that offensive line and give him a little bit more time. Terry McLaurin's a good receiver. You also have Jahan Dotson. Like, they have weapons on the outside for Sam Howell. They got to beef up that front and be able to protect him. And I think that it makes a ton of sense to go get probably the best pass blocking tackle in Olu Fashanu. So totally agree with that. Bears again here at pick number 5. They went offense in the first round. I debated going, if Olu Fashanu was there or taking Joel Alt here, because I don't think their tackle situation is that great outside of Darnell Wright. I think that Braxton Jones can be upgraded, but I think that it's good enough. And they have DJ Moore. They have the receivers. They get Caleb Williams, right? Maybe they go use some money to sign him for agency. So I'm going to go with the edge rusher here. They just upgraded with Montez Sweat, but I think they still are can be like, hey, let's get some more edge. Let's get the best overall edge rusher, in my opinion. And I think we'll talk about Jared Verse coming up here, and he could easily climb up the charts because there were rumors last year that he was going to be a top 10 pick before he went back to Florida State. But I think that Latu out of UCLA has been incredible this year for UCLA. He's been almost unblockable. And so getting them another defensive kind of, creating that havoc, because you think about it, when they had like Khalil Mack and them, that's when their defense was the best. So I'm going to go with them taking Leatu Latu out of UCLA, bolstering up that defensive line, getting a little more pass rush. Him and Montez Sweat could be a pass rushing duo in the upcoming future.
I really like the Latu pick, and I like that you mentioned the tackle situation in Chicago, because Darnell Wright, obviously, he was one of the guys I labeled as my guys last year. I was really high on him, and he ended up going, I think it was 9th or 10th overall.
Yep.
And then Braxton Jones, who's a guy I kind of liked out of Southern Utah, and he's kind of been thrown into a spot maybe a little earlier than Chicago would have liked, but I think he's got room to grow, whether it's at tackle or they move him inside. So I think you can just give him time. And Latu is really only concern for me is he medically retired when he was at Washington before transferring to UCLA, and they let him play, and he's been unbelievable. And kind of look at a guy like Jalen Phillips that had a similar situation. And now he's balling out. He just tore his Achilles, which sucks. But I think Latu can be kind of a similar player. He's my edge one, worth taking at number 5. And then moving on to the Jets. So mock draft simulator we're using's got QB as their number 1 need, and I just don't think that you can justify taking a quarterback right now at
No.
6, especially with the top 2 guys off the board. I really see a gap between 2 and 3. And I think their QB room's not that bad with a healthy Rodgers. I think you got Rodgers, and I don't think Zach Wilson's the problem. I think Zach Wilson's got a lot to work on. But offense put up what? They put up 6 points yesterday because they had a safety against Atlanta. Just don't think it's just Zach that's the issue. Tim Boyle hasn't been able to do anything. Not that he's some sort of world beater at quarterback, but I think it's about protecting the quarterback because we always see with Rodgers potentially coming back, it's like, how is he going to get behind that offensive line? And I mentioned Alt is my 1B, so I really don't think this is a step down or a miss for a team that got robbed of Broderick Jones last year. If you remember, Pittsburgh trading up right ahead of the Jets, who ended up taking Will McDonald. And now I think the Jets get the tackle that they want. Maybe it's not the flashy player that this team thinks that they need, but I really think they need a mainstay at tackle since the Mekhi Becton pick has been a little bit tossy-turny in the last few years with his health and everything.
Yeah. I think you look at Aaron Rodgers and you're like, okay, if he is going to come back off this Achilles injury and keep playing, then number one priority has got to be to protect him, because they were talking about this receiving core as being one of the best in the leagues with Aaron Rodgers, and they have been very underperforming, but we all know Garrett Wilson can be good. They went out and got Aaron Rodgers, some of his guys, and they've been disappointing too. But if he's going to come back, they need to be able to protect Aaron Rodgers. And I think that getting them a big offensive tackle like Joe Alt, that's good in the run game, can still set in the pass game, and probably take over from Mekhi Becton is probably going to be their best bet and going to be probably should be their number one priority. I don't think they need to go get another receiver. I don't think they need to get another defensive guy because they're pretty stacked on the defensive side of the ball. So protecting Rodgers has got to be the number one priority. So I love that Joel Alt fell to him here, not even fell, but is available for him here, and they're able to take him. So the other New York team, the New York Jets at pick 7 here. This is an interesting one for them. I think they just need playmakers, and you mentioned it before before we started this. Is this where you go quarterback? And looking at here, I love Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix is going to be a dang good quarterback in the NFL. Something I value that I don't think a lot of other teams or other people value in the NFL is I think his experience in college football is going to be so valuable. He's going to come in. He's not going to be making a ton of rookie mistakes, right? He's played in the SEC. He's played in the Pac-12. He's played in over 60 games in college football. He's not coming in like Anthony Richardson was last year, where he had only started 15 games in college football, right? Like, he's coming in very experienced. So I know you'll kind of disagree with this one. I'm going to take Bo Nix because I don't know if they believe in Daniel Jones after this year. I know they re-signed him to that huge contract, and that's going to be a huge deal getting over that. But I think they need to bring in a new face, especially with Daniel Jones coming off the ACL. I don't know if he's going to be quite ready come week 1. So I'm going to give them Bo Nix here at quarterback. They miss out on one of the top guys, but they're able to get this next tier. And you kind of look at it as the 19 class where Tua went up there, and then Justin Herbert fell to the Chargers.
Yep.
Bo Nix could easily be pretty dang similar to Justin Herbert coming out of Oregon, where he's just going to be experienced. He's going to be very polished, and we'll see how he worked out for the Giants. So I know you'll disagree with this, but I'm giving him Bo Nix. I like giving him a quarterback. I don't believe in Daniel Jones, and like you said, if they don't believe in him, why keep dumping in picks, especially because you don't know if next year, if you're going to have a top 10 draft pick like they do this year.
Yeah. And I think, listen, Bo Nix is my QB3 also. I just view a bigger gap between 2 and 3. There's only really 2 guys that I would, like I mentioned to you before the show, kind of give the keys to my franchise to. Yeah. And that kind of falls in the range of like top 10, 15 picks. And so I think 7, if you're picking a quarterback at 7, it's like, hey, this is your franchise for the next 3 years, barring anything crazy. And I do think that Bo Nix is going to be a pretty polished player. I think he's learned a lot at Oregon. And I think there's a lot of narratives out there, whether it's the age, like he's the same age as Michael Penix Jr. was when Joe Burrow came in, Will Levis came in. He's not 30 years old, guys.
Yeah.
And then the running from the SEC thing, I think, gets a little misconstrued a little bit because you have a guy like Jaden Daniels, kind of ran from the pack. I disagree with that also. I think it's just 2 guys that were in pretty terrible situations at a crumbling Auburn team. He had to get out of there. Crumbling ASU team after guys like N'Keal Harry and Brandon Ayuk left Daniels. And so those guys swap conferences, and I really don't view that big of an issue in that. Listen, we've already taken a Pac-12 defensive player. Like, this is not a bad conference. And so while Bo at 7 is a little high for me, I kind of see where you're coming from. And I do think he is the QB3 of a 3-man tier that has a lot of experience. All transfers, by the way, Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr., and Jaden Daniels, obviously, who's been a big riser out of LSU. So while I don't think I would take Bo Nix at 7, I do see where you're coming from, and I can kind of agree with that, or begin to. Yeah. And then speaking of LSU, Jaden Daniels, when we're moving to 8, not going to take Jaden Daniels at 8 for the Titans, going to take Jaden Daniels as number 1 target for a team that needs to help out their guy, Will Levis. I'm going to go with Malik Neighbors here. He's my wide receiver 2 going 8, which not really used to that. But this is an unbelievable wide receiver class. Neighbors is number 1 in most classes, would have been number 1 last year. And Marvin Harrison Jr. is just a supernatural player. And Malik Neighbors fits right in at number 2. And he's going to go into a Titans team. I think they'll still have DeAndre Hopkins. I know there's an option. He's 31 years old. So Neighbors can kind of learn under him and immediately jump over guys like Treylon Burks, Nick Westbrook-Akine, and Chris Moore in an offense that's really struggling. And I think maybe he can bring up Treylon Burks, who's kind of, I don't like throwing the B word around, but kind of entering that kind of like, you got to do something, or I'm going to start talking about you as a bust here in terms of what's going on with Treylon Burks. I debated Brock Bowers here. But I do kind of like the future of Chigo Okonkwo, and they just drafted Josh Wiley, who I think can be a 2. So I do think Tennessee kind of building some pieces on offense. Got Tyjae Spears as well. All of the guys that they've drafted last year on the offensive side of the ball, except for their 7th-round pick, are all playing right now. And so I think this is a young team, one of the worst rosters in the NFL in totality. But I think in terms of youth, their youth has been really promising. So I think Neighbors to Tennessee would be very, very helpful for them.
Yeah, I love Malik Neighbors. You go look at his stats this year. I just had him pulled up. Sorry. Over 1,500 yards, 18 yards per receptions, 14 touchdowns. That LSU offense has not been the problem for them this year. Everyone's like, oh, they were supposed to be way better, but, they lost to Florida State and stuff. No, that offense was not the problem. Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors were great all freaking year. So Malik Neighbors is going to be a stud in the NFL. I like the idea, like you said, of having him take over and let Treylon Burks just focus, right? He won't have the number 1 corners on him. He won't have to deal with some of that. And then obviously you still have DeAndre Hopkins, who's a very reliable option. That's setting up Will Levis for success. If that's who they do go with, those 3 options right there are setting him up for success. And, you're able to see what Will Levis is all about. So moving on to pick number 9, the Saints here. This one's a little tough for me. I'm sitting here and I'm like, gosh, is Jameis Winston going to start next week? Is Derek Carr the answer? I don't think it's Derek Carr, but I thought about taking an interior D line and Newton from Illinois, but then you're like, well, they took Brian Bresee last year. He hasn't been very good. I'm going to stick on the defensive line side, but I'm going to go and not reach, but I'm going to go and take Jared Verse. I think I have Chop Robinson ahead of him, but it's 1A, 1B. But I think they need a pass rusher here. Cameron Jordan is not getting any younger. Cam Jordan is still playing their left defensive end. He's 34 years old. You're kind of like, okay, how much longer does he have? So getting them a pass rusher, that's a premium position for them. They need to bulk up that defensive line. They need to get a couple more pressures on the quarterback because they have some guys on the back end that can cover, right? They still have Tyrann Mathieu. They have Marcus May. They got guys in, and then Marshawn Lattimore's obviously on IR. So they have guys in the secondary. You're just looking at that defensive line like, okay, they probably need to bulk that up a little. So I'm going to go with Jared Verse here over Chop Robinson. I'm going to take him to the Saints at pick 9.
And I do like the pick. And we were just also talking before the show. I went to the ACC championship game this past weekend. And like we mentioned earlier, Latu's my edge 1, and Verse is a kind of guy that's slipped a little bit, put on some weight. And that's not saying he got fat, just got bigger this offseason. And, the movement slowed down a little bit. And I think it's kind of he's kind of had a little bit of a different style of game And he's kind of showed his versatility this season, but man, he was impressive to watch in person. And also shout out to Braden Fisk, who's also been unbelievable. We probably won't be taking him in round one. He's more of a day two guy, really big Senior Bowl guy that I like. But he's a super impressive player. And so I think that the FSU guys, it's a good pick right here to go get Jared Verse. And then kind of moving on to number 10, with the Bucks, I think you kind of need a playmaker in this offense. And while QB kind of might be a need, Baker Mayfield hasn't been bad for them. And I'm not saying by any means like, oh yeah, it's fine, Baker Mayfield's the quarterback. But I do think they can wait. I don't think this team is that close to being super great. And I think there's a player on the board on the offensive side of the ball that I would not hesitate to take if I was Tampa, and that's Brock Bowers. I think they can get super special tight end out of Georgia. Kind of does it all. Yes, he blocks. Yes, he receives. You give it to him on an end around. He's super fast, got super good hands. We're talking about the 10th overall pick here, so I don't want to make it seem like, oh, he's, 10th player in this draft. No, this is positional value and kind of the premise of maybe you don't take a tight end at 4 like the Atlanta Falcons did, especially if they're not going to use him. But Arthur Smith is not the coach of the Buccaneers, at least for now. Never know with him. But yeah, I think Brock Bowers fits super well. Bucks have a good receiving core, but I don't know if there was a contract signed last year, but I don't know what the deal is with Chris Godwin and his longevity on the team. So I think a guy like Bowers next to Mike Evans kind of creates real problems for defenses trying to stop this.
Yeah, it's he's a generational type of prospect. You talk about the yards after contact that he generates, and he still has been great this year, even with his injury. A huge part of that Georgia offense. So yeah, I don't disagree. I think that you look at him and kind of compare him to the other tight ends that have gone top 10-ish range the last couple of years. TJ Hawkinson and then Kyle Pitts, and you're like, he's right up there, if not better than these guys. So
oh yeah,
totally agree with that pick there. I don't hate that pick at all. I think that's a very, very good pick for them. So moving on to the Raiders, pick 11. I think this is where a cornerback comes off. I'm looking at their depth chart right here, and you're kind of like, yeah, they signed Jack Jones off the Patriots once he gets dropped, but they don't really have one of those number one cornerback type of guys. So there's been no corners taken off the board. So they kind of get a pick of the litter. I'm going to go with a guy that I have ranked at my number one cornerback position. And it might not be who everyone is thinking it is. But I have Kool-Aid McKinstry going there. I don't know if you have like Cooper DeJean or Nate Wiggins or one of them above them. I think Kool-Aid McKinstry has been guarding one of the or some of the best receivers in college football, right? He's playing in the SEC. He's going against the best competition. So I'm going Kool-Aid McKinstry here for the Las Vegas Raiders. I think that they need to bulk up that secondary. You can argue, like I thought about taking Rome Odunze here. I'm like, hey, maybe Devontae Adams is gone, right? So maybe they need to get a number one receiver because after him, all they have is Jacoby Myers and Hunter Renfrow. And then they took Michael Mayer last year out of Notre Dame. You could also argue maybe they need some offensive line, but I think the two top offensive linemen are out. So then who do you reach for? Is it J.C. Latham or is it Tylese Fuaga? But I just wanted to get a true lockdown corner for them. I taken Kool-Aid McKinstry. He's my number one corner on my board. So what do you think about that pick?
McKinstry is my number one corner also. I have an early first round grade on him, and I think it's helped out this Alabama team a lot. I think you can kind of just put Kool-Aid on an island, turn your head, kind of like a good kicker taking an extra point. You just send the special teams unit out there and it's good. I think Kool-Aid McKinstry really kind of the island corner, the shutdown corner in this draft. And there's other guys like Nate Wiggins, who I think is good. And I think he's a really talented player. And he gets, sometimes, gets beat more than you would like, but he's really taken a step up this year. You got DeJean, his versatility. And it's kind of a mysterious injury I haven't really looked into there, but I know he missed some time. And they kind of been a little weird about it, but that's college football for you, where they just get to say, hey, lower body. And that's that. But I really like the pick for Kool-Aid. And I hope it doesn't end up like some other corners that they've taken in the top 15, like Damon Arnett. And hope Kool-Aid can, really be a mainstay in Vegas, and I really like the fit there. And moving on to their division rival, the Chargers, who, man, I don't know when they're going to figure it out, when they're going to not pick at 12. And last year it was 21. They made the playoffs, but they made the playoffs and it still doesn't feel like a success because of the way they left the playoffs.
Yeah.
And so I think the Chargers have kind of a lot of needs here, and I wish I could put HC in there also for head coach, because I think he's done this team a little dirty. I think they have a lot of weapons, and they're not really doing much on offense. And Mike Williams is out, and Quentin Johnston isn't what we thought he would be. And he was my wide receiver 4. And he got taken number 1 out of the class. So I had a lot of questions, thought they could have used a slot guy, which really any of the other 3 would have been perfect. But I'm going to go with somebody on the defensive side of the ball. No, I just talked a lot about their offense, but the Chargers haven't been able to stop the run in a long time. And so my number 1 interior guy is Jerzon Newton out of not Notre Dame, Illinois. And that's who I'm going to take here. And I don't think I'm as high as him as PFF is, with the number 9 rank right there, but it's kind of somewhere around that, inside the top 15 for me. And he's not the prototypical size of an interior defensive lineman that you would like, but every once in a while there's the guys that don't really meet the size thresholds, and you're just like, he's a good football player. Like, he's just a really good football player. And he beat a lot of guys on really good teams. He took over the Penn State game. And that's a really good offensive line, really good run game. And while Illinois put up a kind of pathetic performance against Penn State, he's just an interior D lineman. He's had a great year last year. I think he is a top 15 pick. And so I'm going to go Jerzon Newton for the Chargers. And I think they need to stop the run in a division with 2 teams that like to run the football, Denver and Vegas. And then, Isaiah Pacheco is a really good player, and whoever the Chiefs trot out there is going to succeed. So I think the Chargers need to stop the run. Haven't been able to do it in a while. Time to put an end to that after they swung and missed on Jerry Tillery in the first round a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and we've seen what a great interior defensive lineman can do. You talk about Jalen Carter from last year. Like, those dudes can make a difference instantly. And Jerzon Newton has a 15% pass rush win percentage according to PFF. He's able to do both really well. Like you said, you got to stop the run in that division and in the AFC. Maybe they go and trade for Bill Belichick, or they figure out something with New England. I think that could be the missing piece for them. And I know that that's going to kind of be a hot take, but you look at it, it's like, is Bill Belichick looking to get one more Super Bowl? Well, he needs to go to a team that has established a quarterback situation. Justin Herbert's there. They have talent at receivers. They have a ton of talent on the defensive side of the ball. They're going to get a top 15 pick this year, most likely, unless they were to win out. So I could see him going there and fixing those issues. But that would be pretty dang impressive if he could do that. So moving on to the Bengals, right? They're going to probably be a little bit lower just because of the injury to Joe Burrow. It's kind of unfortunate that they have to go with that. I've talked about corner here. They did take Dax Hill last year. He's now a safety. Cambrit Taylor also. They could go offensive line, right? Like, yeah, they have Orlando Brown, but is Jonah Williams really the answer for them on the outside? He's 26 years old, and he's not like a world beater. He was a first-round pick, but there's now 2 season-ending injuries for Joe Burrow. Like, do they want to continue to let him take this beating, or do they want to protect him? So I'm going to go with an offensive tackle here. I don't know where you stand on this guy. I think Tyrese Fuaga out of Oregon State has been very impressive in the Pac-12. I'm going to take him and let him play that left tackle position that right tackle position, and let Orlando Brown stay at left tackle. But I'm going to take Tyrese Fuaga here for Oregon State. Give Joe Burrow a little bit more pass protection because they have the receivers, right? And you could go like, I easily could have said Rome Odunze, right? Like, because I think T. Higgins isn't going to come back. So receiver makes a ton of sense for me. And we all know they prioritized taking Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell a couple years ago in the draft. So maybe they go Rome Odunze. But if it's me, 2 season-ending injuries for Joe Burrow in 3 or 4 years, you got to find a way to protect him. So I'm going to bulk up that offensive line and take Tyrese Fuaga out of Oregon State.
So I'm really high on Fuaga, and I was kind of high on him before this kind of meteoric rise that we've seen and like discussed as a top 10 pick before the season. Didn't know who he was. Way I found out about him is a couple guys I follow on Twitter that I really like. I mean, guys like Jordan Reed, who works with ESPN, Matt Miller, both guys work for ESPN. Really good. Shameless plug there, but guys that really talented in terms of following the draft. A lot of content all year round. And they were watching the left tackle for Oregon State this offseason. And then Fuaga jumped off the page as a right tackle. And they were like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And he's taken off this season. He is the best run blocker in the draft at the offensive tackle position, better than the two guys that we drafted earlier in terms of run stopping or run protection. And you look at an Oregon State team that gave Martinez like 30 carries a game. DJU takes 10 a game. And so they do run the football. He's got a lot of practice in it. And I think it's a perfect storm pick for Cincinnati, because you remember Orlando Brown left Baltimore because he wanted to play left tackle. So he's moved over there. I think Jonah Williams has to kick inside. Said it before he was drafted, and they still haven't done it. And I think I'm kind of the camp of where you can let a guy fail with a short leash and then move him inside just to make sure you're not missing, your franchise left tackle. I think it's time to move him inside. Fuaga's played right tackle all year.
Yep.
Slide him in there. I think it's a perfect pick for the Bengals. And then the Bills at 14. Don't know what they're doing here, but here they are. And I think they can't leave this 14 slot without a really good player. Obviously, they have their franchise quarterback. We think they have their franchise number one, although it feels like every 8 weeks, Stephon Diggs one's out. Yep. But I think this isn't really hedging the Stephon Diggs future, but I think it's really helping out the future when it comes to guys like Gabe Davis. I think he's going to be on his way out soon. He's got to go get paid. Buffalo shouldn't do it. And then you got a guy like Khalil Shakir, who I think can kind of step in and be that number 3 guy, but you don't want him to be your number 2. That's why I'm going to take Rome Odunze, who is a luxury as a number 2. And then I think he could grow into that number 1 role if Stephon leaves. And he's not the youngest guy on the planet. So can kind of, when that rookie contract ends, if he pans out, you re-sign him. Diggs is gone. Rome's your 1. And I think they got to get Josh Allen help. And a receiver that he trusts. Rome's been really impressive, and he's used to catching the fastballs from Michael Penix. So shouldn't be that big of a difference with the flamethrower that the Bills have at QB.
Yeah, 6'3", big-bodied receiver. What's crazy about him is he leads the country in deep catches with 20, 655 deep yards, leads the country, and he's tied for first with contested catches with 17. He has a 71% contested catch rate. So this is a guy Josh Allen can throw it up to. He'll be more of a red zone threat, continue to let Stephon Diggs run the routes that he's so great at and so elusive at. And then Odunze is kind of that deep threat down the middle of the field, like you mentioned, taking over for that Gabe Davis role. I like the pick here. This is scary for me as a Patriots fan, giving Josh Allen, Rome Odunze in the AFC East, because you look at the Bills and you're like, they're not as bad as their record, right? They obviously have some problems eternally, and Josh Allen needs to figure out turnover situations, but it's just, for me, that does not sit right with me and kind of scares me. I don't really like that.
That's my stab at fixing it, get him a receiver he can trust. Cause I feel like a lot of the turnovers are trying to find Diggs, and just throwing it out there. And that's kind of how you lose football games. So got to get him help.
For sure. You got to, moving on to the Broncos at pick 15. This one's another tough one because their defense has really stepped up, right? You're looking at it and you're like, hey, their defense has been a lot better than what it started off this year. I still think they can use a number 1 pass rusher. Jonathan Harris, Nick Bonito are their 2 right, or sorry, Jonathan Harris and Zach Allen are their 2 right now. Nick Bonito's that weak side backer out of Oklahoma last year. So I'm going to give him Chop Robinson. I think that this guy's been great for Penn State this year. He is a monster of a man, 6'3", 250. He has a great pass rush grade. He has a 21% pass rush win rate and a 92.3% pass rush grade on PFF, which are insanely high. 18 hurries on the year, 3 sacks, 5 quarterback hits. I like Chop Robinson, and he's used to playing outside of the tackle. He's not really more of a 5 technique on the inside. He's just going to be a pin your ears guy back and be able to go rush the quarterback. So I'm going to give him Chop Robinson. You think about the Broncos, right? When they had Peyton Manning and stuff, obviously they had great offenses, but they also had DeMarcus Ware, Von Miller, right? They had great pass rushers. So giving him Chop Robinson from Penn State is kind of my fix to that defensive line.
Yeah, I really like Chop Robinson, and while he's not one of the in that top tier of with Verse and Law too, who I think are up there by themselves, I think Chop's a really good player. He's played against some of the best O lines in the country. That's what you do when you play at Penn State, and so we've seen Penn State produce guys like Odafe Owe, who really good at getting to the passer. Maybe don't turn it into sack production, because if you remember, Odafe Owe had no sacks in his last year in college. That was a big concern, but he was tops and pressures. And if you pressure the quarterback enough, you're going to get sacks. And it's worked out for Baltimore so far. And I think Chop is even better at getting to the quarterback than he was. That's why he's going 15, not 31.
Yep.
And so I think Chop would be a really good pick for Denver. And they kind of got the speed rusher in Benito last year. You kind of get the more speed to power guy with Chop Robinson, who's really got a full arsenal. And then moving on to Seattle, that's kind of the same thing I'm going to do. So I really like Boye Mafe coming out of Minnesota, who's a combine legend, owned the Big Ten. And I think that he's been a revelation for Seattle. And while Dallas Turner is my next best edge rusher, that's the direction I'm going. I think Seattle's got to get to the quarterback, especially in that division. Dallas Turner's my next best edge rusher, but I think his profile is a little too similar to Mafe. And then PFF's got the guy right under him. They get to keep him in the Pacific Northwest. It's going to be a local player for where Seattle is. I'm going to go Braylon Trice. I think Braylon Trice is a really impressive player, really physical, really roughed up the guys in the Pac-12. And Fuaga held up well against him when they played head-to-head, but Trice was still able to power his way to close down the pocket. And when he was opposite of on the other side of the line, really disrupted in that Oregon State game. He's had a really impressive season. And I put together a post every week, just the top performers, kind of go into, ESPN, just look at the stats, guys I watched, go to PFF, kind of just look who dominated where. When I hit that pressures button every week, Braylon Trice is right at the top. And he's a guy that's just dominated week in and week out. And I think this would be a really good pick for Seattle. You go back-to-back edge rushers. And I do have Dallas Turner. They're really close, but Dallas Turner a little higher, but I think Turner profile is a little too similarly to what they have in Boye Mafe. So I would go with Trice.
Yeah, I like Braylon Trice. I think that keeping him in the Pacific Northwest, like you mentioned, with Washington being there in Seattle, let the hometown kid right there. I like that pick right there for Braylon Trice. Probably a little bit higher than most people would think, but he is not a bad player at all. I think maybe you compare this to Will McDonald last year for the Jets, where you're like, oh, he's probably going to be a back end of the first round guy. Someone's going to reach up to get him because he was very productive in college, and he has a chance to win the national championship with Washington, or at least make the national championship. So I like that pick. That's a great pick right there for Seattle. Moving on to the Los Angeles Rams. I don't think they need a receiver, right? They got Cooper Kupp. They got Puka Nacua. Offensive line can always be a help. They did get Steve Avila last year, who's been a great interior offensive line guy. I just don't know what the quarterback situation is, right? Is it going to be Carson Wentz? Is it going to be Matthew Stafford? I think they also need a corner, but I'm going to take Amarius Mims here, the tackle out of Georgia. I think that he's going to be the staple for them. And, if Matthew Stafford is staying, right, he's entering into his, how old is he? I'm looking at 35. He's got to be protected, right? And they don't have that elite offensive line. They got Ulrich Jackson at left tackle and Rob Havenstein at right tackle. And then, they got the interior guys, Steve Avila, Brian Allen, Kevin Dotson. So I think they got to find and even if it's not Matthew Stafford, right? Like, say they bring in a young quarterback, or say they do go Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz has had injury issues too. They got to beef up that offensive line, and they got to protect whoever they're having there. So I'm going to have them go with Amarius Mims. Maybe you have J.C. Latham over Amarius Mims at tackle, but I like Amarius Mims out of Georgia. I think that he's great. He's very athletic, moves well, and he's built like a freaking cinder block. Like the dude is crazy massive, and we'll see what his wingspan is. But when I look at him and he's playing for Georgia, I'm like, this guy is a freaking dude. 6'7", 340 pounds, just a mountain of a man.
Yeah, he's a beast. I've gotten to see him in person a couple times. And I went to watch him when South Carolina went and played Georgia, and he got hurt in that game. But just pregame, walking around, taking the one-on-ones in their little pregame kind of scrimmages, he is a monster. And I don't want to make it seem like, all you got to do is look at that logo. You got that G right there. He'll be a good player, because that's not how it works. There's tons of guys that come out of Bama and Georgia that aren't great players, but Amarius Mims is one of the really good players from Georgia. Would love to see him go protect former Georgia Bulldog quarterback Matt Stafford. I think that would be really cool.
I thought you were going to say Stetson Bennett.
Oh, no. If he's still with the team, I don't know what's going on there. But I think Mims, worry a little bit about the not saying he's like an injury prone player. You got to worry about it. But he had a tightrope surgery after getting hurt in that South Carolina game. And he went out against Bama. Don't know how that ended up. If he ended up coming back, I got to go check that out. But so just a little note there. Don't know how healthy he is. Hopefully nothing serious, but I do like the pick. Now we go to the Cardinals for the second time. So they took Marvin Harrison Jr. So if you're seeing that wide receiver need, that's been addressed. And I really think the Cardinals need to get better when it comes to running the ball, stopping the run. But I think that's something they're going to have to address later in the draft, because I don't love this guard class. I think a lot of the guards in this class are tackles that I'm going to want to move inside. And if you want to talk about a few of those guys, I think they'll go later. But it's like guys like Graham Barton, Troy Fontenot, definitely profile more as guys that are going to move inside. So I'm going to go help the Cardinals on the back end. They're a bottom 10 team in coverage grade. And I think when you're playing against a team like the Rams, and then, the 49ers are going to attack you in every which way. And I think the Cardinals are going to have to go help themselves out in the back end. And I'm going to take a super versatile player in Cooper DeJean that I think you can put at safety, at corner. And I know I mentioned with those kind of multi-position guys that I'd like to let them fail at their position before moving them to the other position. I think Cooper DeJean, you can just do both. I think you can just play him both spots. And now hurts my heart a little bit, because this is a team that took Isaiah Simmons, kind of failed my guy. And I think the Giants, may bring him back a little bit. I think he's played decently well there. And then they took Zaven Collins and kind of didn't amount to much. So hurts a little bit putting in another guy like that in the hands of the Cardinals. But I hope they can make that work out, because DeJean's a heck of a player.
He is. And, we'll see what his status is for the rest of the season. And then we'll also see, what the injury was, or I'm sure we'll hear about it during the combine process. So moving on to the 19th pick, the Atlanta Falcons. I'm going to do something a little fun here. I'm looking at their depth chart. I'm looking at Bijan Robinson, Drake London. I'm like, hey, they got some talent on the offensive side of the ball. I don't think Desmond Ritter's him. I don't think that that's the opportunity to, I know they're sitting at 6-6 and they're first in the NFC South, but they're not going to win a first round playoff game, in my opinion. I'm going to go with Jaden Daniels here. I think that could you imagine Jaden Daniels, Bijan Robinson on the same team? Jaden Daniels has impressed me. At first, I think I still think I have him and Penix as like my quarterback 4A, 4B. I think Penix throws it a little better, but when you're talking about the best just playmaker, I think you look at what the Falcons have done and what they've wanted to do on the offensive side of the ball. They've just taken versatile dudes. Bijan Robinson, pair him with Jaden Daniels. I'm going to go with Jaden Daniels at pick 19. Let them have a little fun on that offensive side of the ball with Arthur Smith, him, Bijan, Drake London. See what they can do on there, and probably get rid of Ritter. And I just don't know if maybe he proves me wrong the last half of the season, but I think that Jaden Daniels would be so fun in Atlanta.
Yeah, I like the pick. I'm not the biggest Jaden Daniels guy out there, just because that now, if you're the biggest Jaden Daniels guy, that might mean you have him ahead of a guy like Drake May. I think people are getting a little bit carried away, because I think it's the guy that should win the Heisman Trophy, but we've seen plenty of Heisman Trophy winners. not pan out or not be the number one guy. And they're not always the number one guy. Has a lot to do with where you play. And like, it was a hot take last year, but Bryce Young was my QB3. And a lot of people were like, Howard Stroud never won Heisman and Richardson wasn't that good. But it's like, okay, the Heisman trophy's doesn't matter to me at all, actually. It just means he's a good player. Thank you for reaffirming that Bryce Young's good at football. Like, Jaden Daniels is really good at football. And he's got to put a couple numbers on that weight, that frame, get a little bigger, fill into that 6'3", 6'4" height that he has. But he's putting up crazy numbers running the football. I think he's got to learn how to go down, protect himself, because he takes some of the craziest hits. And I'm surprised that one of them, I mean, not even including the Dallas Turner kind of dirty hit on him that knocked him out of the Alabama game. But at the ends of runs, he's got to go down. I think that's something a little harder to teach than people might think it is. But I think Jaden Daniels can be a really good player and hopefully gets used right in that offense. But I know Arthur Smith likes to run the ball, so that might be a really good fit. And moving on to Green Bay, this is after last night's win. Absolutely wild to see Green Bay at 20.
Yeah.
Football's better when they're good. And so happy to see them kind of turning the corner. And if they were really good, kind of bringing them down towards late 20s, which I don't think they'll end up. That kind of number one need that PFF's got, I really kind of buy into that. I think maybe they could be the team that grabs the first round running back. Absolutely not going to do that here, especially after the college football world lost Jonathan Brooks from Texas. And I think if they were picking a lot higher, you would look at a guy like Talize Fuaga from Oregon State would be a perfect fit. I'm gonna go the offensive line route, and he's not gonna be the number one guy that PFF has, but I think Jordan Love's really coming into his own, and I think you got to go get him a guy that's gonna protect against the pass rush really well. And I think it's arguably the best pass blocker in this entire draft class at 20. And I think he's a raw player. He'll be at the Senior Bowl. It's Patrick Paul out of Houston, who I'm a big fan of, higher on than most. I think he is worthy of a late first round selection. Huge frame. I think he's got ways to go when it comes to the impact blocking skill of the run game, but I really think he's a really good pass blocker. I don't think the Packers need to be a run-first team. I think Jordan Love's really good. They just got to realize he's not Aaron Rodgers and needs to throw the ball, 100 times a game. But I think Love's really, really talented.
Yeah, I like Patrick Paul. Jordan Love's been really impressive, and I don't know what it is with the Packers, but drafting someone, letting them sit for 4 years seems to be the answer at the quarterback situation. So
maybe I should have taken Penix. Sit him for 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, you got to wait until Jordan Love's at least 34, and then let him play till 38. And
questioning science.
Yeah, they exactly let him go do a darkness retreat, and then you can draft a quarterback. So, no, I like Patrick Paul, big frame. Like you mentioned, a lot of those guys that are above him on this PFF simulator right here. You got Graham Barton from Duke, and then Troy Fontenot from Washington are most likely going to slide in to the offensive guard position. So getting that true guy in Patrick Paul at tackle is good. I like Jordan Morgan too out of Arizona. I'm sure we'll talk about him before, just because there's not that many tackles left, and tackles seem to go a lot in the first round. So moving on to the Vikings. This is a tough one, right? We don't think that Kirk Cousins is going to be back with them. He might sign somewhere else. I don't know if they bring him back, so they could be in the quarterback market. I know that you're not high on Penix either. Don't buy into it. I think that there's going to be quarterback needy teams in this draft. And I see that there's a legitimate possibility for 5 of them to go. Like, I look at the quarterbacks this year and compare it to Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, and Justin Fields. And I think that these 5 quarterbacks could be a little bit better than that group right there. And we're still sitting at pick 21, and we haven't even had our 5th one taken. So I'm going to I'm going to have the Vikings take Michael Penix Jr. right here, let him develop in that system, whether he starts week 1 right away or whether they keep Josh Dobbs there and let him sit. I think they need to get a high, a high potential quarterback like someone like Michael Penix in there, or maybe they go the free agency route. You never know, but I look at their roster right now without Kirk Cousins, Josh Dobbs, Nick Mullins, Jaron Hall. I don't know if there's a quarterback on that roster. And if you want to bring back Justin Jefferson and you did draft Jordan Addison last year, you might need to get a quarterback that, is able to, throw the ball to them and, keep them relevant, kind of like Kirk Cousins did. So maybe they bring back Cousins. I don't know how likely it is, but I'm going to give them Penix here just for the sake of this mock draft.
Yeah, and I feel like time's up for Cousins there. Unfortunately, not the way I would have liked to see him go out. And if I was making the pick, I also would have taken Penix in the spot, just so you know. I feel like that's a big need. And when you need a quarterback, sometimes you got to do it. And listen, maybe in a perfect world, the team we pick first overall get Justin Fields. Justin Fields not going to be available for Minnesota. They're in the same division. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I've seen a little bit of that, like, oh, let's just wait for that. And it's like, Vikings fans, I don't think that's going to happen at all. Yeah. I don't think you're going to be a team that they consider calling at all. And so I think that, Minnesota might have to move towards quarterback. And a couple of the other quarterbacks that pulled up when you were on the QB board over there, Carson Beck, I think goes back. Shadur Sanders, I think he goes back.
Yep.
And I'm not the biggest JJ McCarthy fan in the world, and I think he also probably should go back. Ewers will go back. Pratt will go back, I think. Well, Pratt maybe not, but, this is pick 21. And so I think that's kind of the last guy that I would really trust to develop into a QB1 that's there. And I think Minnesota might have to make that move. Looking at Indy here, this is a team that I'm kind of down to wide receiver or DB. And they have their number one guy at receiver. Michael Pittman Jr. is a heck of a player. Gets overlooked sometimes just because maybe he's not the flashiest guy in the world. And there's a lot of receivers. But Michael Pittman Jr. is a heck of a player. And we saw, Alec Pierce kind of start to emerge. I've been a big fan of his, just kind of waiting for him to take that next step. And then, they drafted Josh Downs as well. So I actually think I'm comfortable with their three guys. And fallen right to Indy is Nate Wiggins. And I think that they can grab him, corner, help them out on the back end, and have him be a really talented player in their secondary. Would have loved to maybe take a linebacker here, but I'm just really not confident in any of those guys in the first round. I think that's going to be a day 2 position group. And Wiggins to Indy is a heck of a pick.
Yeah, and I think Nate Wiggins could be the second cornerback taken off the board. I'm pretty sure didn't we have someone else go other than Kool-Aid? Yeah, Cooper DeJean, right? So there could be arguments made for either of those guys, both versatile, both great corners. I like you taking one for Indy right there. They got to bulk up that secondary right there because I think, like you mentioned, the offense with Jonathan Taylor re-signing, Anthony Richardson, like they showed that they can be dangerous. So I like bulking up that defensive side for them. Moving on to the Steelers. They took Broderick Jones last year, trade up. I'm looking at the defensive depth chart. It's like, gosh, Joey Porter's been a hit. Minka Fitzpatrick's still great. Patrick Peterson's a solid veteran. I don't know you could look at receiver. Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Allen Robinson might not be there. So maybe they, get someone for Kenny Pickett. I like going the receiver route for them and pairing someone up with George Pickens, just because you look at Deontay Johnson, right? He's had injury problems. He hasn't been as productive as he once was. He's still a great option, but Allen Robinson probably not going to be there for much longer, right? He's 30 years old. So I'm looking to sign for them to draft like a deep threat, right? And they have Deontay Johnson. George Pickens can go up and make plays. He's 6'3". I'm going to give him Emeka Egbuka right here out of Ohio State. I think that he's a great receiver for them. When you're looking at his stats right here, and again, Kyle McCord throwing to him, just it wasn't the ideal situation like it was with CJ Stroud last year. But you look at his 2022, almost 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns, 15 yards per reception. It's a little bit skewed this year with injuries and stuff like that for Emeka Egbuka. But I think this is the time where he comes off. I don't know how they're going to view their receiver situation, but just looking at Allen Robinson, I don't know if he's going to be there longer. So I'm going to give him another receiver here, Emeka Egbuka, pairing up with George Pickens and Deontay Johnson.
And I think that's a good pick. I think they need to get some guys working in the slot. And, Egbuka, Deontay, kind of different types of receivers. Maybe they could both line up in the slot at some points, not both at the same time, but I'm saying one in, one out. But Johnson's kind of more of that deep threat, and I think Egbuka can help you out over the middle, and then just Pickens is Pickens and will just go wherever you need him to. And they've had guys that haven't really worked out, like the Allen Robinson signing hasn't been great. Pat Fryermuth has worked out very well, but he's had some injury troubles, so they don't always have the receivers coming through there. I'm still holding out hope for my guy Calvin Austin, but I don't think he's a 3. I think he's maybe a 4 deep threat guy that you can throw in there, and you can use him in a pinch if some guys go down. But I do like the Egbuka pick, and it's going to be a new offensive coordinator, hoping it's a little bit better there for Moving on to Houston, pick that I thought might have been a little bit higher, and really hurts me as a Ravens fan that Joe Flacco might be the reason that this Houston pick keeps getting worse and worse in terms of draft capital, because I think Cleveland's going to squeak out some wins. But Houston made the most of their picks last year, gave up a lot. They still have a first rounder. Will Anderson has been a revelation for them. I'm a really big fan of what they have going on in the back end with Petrie and Stingley. Stroud, rookie of the year. Tank Dell has been the best wide receiver, and huge fan of Nico Collins and what he's done. I like Xavier Hutchinson, who they have kind of working in, because he's got a lot of developing to do, but he was really good out of Iowa State. So we talked about those tackles that are going to slide inside. I'm going to take one right now. I like Troy Fontenot out of Washington, a little better than Graham Barton, so I'm going to go in that direction. I think Fontenot is kind of that meaner type of player than Barton. And I think this team, if you've noticed, Dameon Pierce kind of struggling a little more this year. Devin Singletary hasn't been able to do great. So I think they need to get somebody slide him inside, help that run game out. It'll open it up for Stroud. So I like taking a guard here for Houston. I don't know if Fontenot could snap the football, but his height weight projectiles are really, really good as a center. So that could be a little project for Houston, but I really like Fontenot as a guard.
Yeah, I thought he was very impressive in the Pac-12 championship game. Very good feet. Again, I think that he is just going to be one of those very super athletic offensive guards that everyone really likes. When you play tackle and you slide in, you're going to be more athletic than most guys. And so I like that pick right there for Houston. Setting up CJ Stroud for some success, because you've seen Nico Collins, Noah Brown, Tank Dell, even though with his injury, hopefully, he's able to come back to full health. They are freaking good offensively. They are going to be okay. So getting guys around CJ Stroud that can protect him has got to be a huge priority for them right there. So moving on to the Chiefs, pick 25, right? No one thought they'd be down this low. And, honestly, they might not be down this low when the season comes or when the season comes to an end. So I think they need playmakers on the outside, right? Rashee Rice is turning into someone that's really good. Sky Moore was drafted high last year. Kadarius Toney's kind of being a little bit disappointing. And then Marquez Valdez-Scantling has been disappointing too. So I hate doing this because this would scare the living crap out of me, but I'm going to go with Keon Coleman for the Chiefs. This guy is a freak for Florida State. He is going to be so good in the NFL. I'm excited to watch him. He looks so good at Florida State. Some of the catches he makes. I think giving him or pairing him with Patrick Mahomes that's a pretty scary thought, and it could torture the leagues for the next couple of years.
Yeah, and Keon's our 5th receiver coming off the board. He's going to be anywhere from that kind of wide receiver 4 to 7 range for me. I don't think he's really in that top 3 with Rome Neighbors and Marvin Harrison, but I think he's just on the outside of that. I think he's got some, lapses with the hands in terms of drops, but he makes some incredible catches. The drops are just like the easy ones. And he had a couple in the ACC championship game, but again, what I think kind of gets taken out of context with that is the volume. Like, they haven't been throwing the football as much. They've had backup quarterbacks at FSU, and it's not really a pass heavy offense. And so the numbers aren't really there. But Keon Coleman's a heck of a player, and I think he'll get heck of a lot more volume if he ends up in Kansas City. And so I think a guy like Keon Coleman or a guy like Xavier Legette, who I think profiles more of like a Deebo Samuel versus Keon Coleman, who can just go up and get it and be that X receiver that the Chiefs don't really have. I think Coleman can be great. And if you want a guy that needs to learn a little bit, KC's perfect spot for him.
Yep.
Andy Reid's a genius on the offensive side of the ball. And so back in the AFC South, I picked for Indy already, Tennessee as well, Houston as well. So we're going Jacksonville here. And when I picked with Indy, Nate Wiggins fell in my lap, and Dallas Turner's fallen all the way to a team that has been really impressive in Jacksonville, but the pass rush hasn't been there totally. And they've had some misses, more notably the number 1 overall pick a few years ago. And I think Dallas Turner is much better than the 26th player off the board. But, if you're watching and you're just like, whoa, Dallas Turner shouldn't go 26. Sometimes it doesn't always work that way. Like teams, we just went on a stretch of teams that didn't really need an edge rusher. And I picked Braylon Trice to Seattle over Turner just because Turner's more similar to Boye Mafe. And that's how steals happen. So I think Jacksonville gets one here. Think the card would be turned in pretty quick.
Yeah, I like that pick. Dallas, I was just going to talk about how he's falling probably farther than a lot of people would like because he has the upside to be so good. Those Alabama pass rushers, a little bit raw. He has the option to be really freaking good. And, could be better than Trayvon Walker that they took last year or 2 years ago at number 1. So we'll see how that one turns out. Dallas, man, I'm looking at them. What holes do they have, right? Like this just seems like a luxury pick to me. You could take another running back to pair with Tony Pollard. Don't think they want to do that in the first round, right? They have a bunch of good receivers. Maybe they look to get a little bit more receivers here just because Brandon Cooks is older. CeeDee Lamb is obviously that elite receiver. Michael Gallup, you're like, he's maybe not that number 2. I don't know. I don't know if they need interior offensive linemen. Zach Martin is a little bit older, so you could talk about Graham Barton maybe sliding in there. But then again, I look at a guy that's in their state and someone that if they don't get over the hump this year to pair with CeeDee Lamb would be very fun to watch. So I'm going to go with wide receiver A.D. Mitchell out of Texas. Keep him in that state right there. Pair him with CeeDee Lamb just because, like I said, right, Brandon Cooks is probably not going to be on there for much longer for them. Michael Gallup has had injury issues, and he hasn't been that number 2 wide receiver. So let's go get someone for Dak Prescott who's having an MVP type of season. Let's pair him with CeeDee Lamb and let those two be, kind of the guys for the future for Dak Prescott and, see if they can get over the hump there. I look at the defensive side. It's like, yeah, you probably could have taken a pass rusher, but we all know Micah Parsons, even though he's listed as a backer, is able to pass rush, and he's one of the best at doing it in the league. They have De'Aaron Bland, Stephon Gilmore, not to mention Trayvon Diggs is on IR. So I don't know. I feel like this was a luxury pick for Dallas, and, let's go get him one of the fastest receivers in there in A.D. Mitchell.
Yeah, listen, A.D. Mitchell transferred from Georgia, and he's had he's missed a lot of time in his past, but it's not really, those injuries that really concern you when you're looking at a prospect. Maybe with a guy like Michael Penix has those kind of injuries. And A.D. Mitchell's been really good for a high power Texas offense. And he can go up and get it. He can explode after the catch, and he's not even the fastest guy on his team. Xavier Worthy is a blazer. But I do like Mitchell more than Worthy, just because I think Worthy's got, might be one-dimensional. I think he's a little better than Jalen Hyatt, but that similar profile that we saw last year with Jalen Hyatt. And I think Dallas is one of the more complete teams. This is a scary, scary pick.
Yeah.
Moving on to Detroit, who, hello, if you look at the teams that we just picked for on the screen right now, you got Chiefs, Jags, Cowboys, Ravens, Eagles, Niners, and the Lions are here. And a lot of people were high on them preseason, but this is kind of weird to see them at 9-3 this late in the year.
It is.
And I think the one thing that sticks out to me, it kind of makes this pick easy in terms of position, is the back end for the Lions. I really want to see them improve in the secondary, and it hasn't bit them in the butt too much this year because, Justin Fields not really going downfield. And when you're looking in the division, Kirk Cousins went down and Jordan Love's kind of still growing. And then you kind of look at the Ravens game where they got killed on the back end. And then that whole game just kind of went downhill from there. And so there's two guys that really stick out to me. Lassiter's a great player. TJ Tampa's a great player. All these guys are really good players. This cornerback class is really good, but I'm kind of down to Kalen King and Terry and Arnold. Arnold's been the 2 at at Alabama this year. And then King's kind of my guy. And while King's kind of slid a little bit because he's had a tough go at it against those number one guys that he's seen in the Big Ten, I like him a little more. And while he might not end up in the first round, I kind of planted my flag on him early in the draft process last summer. And so I'm going to keep riding with Kalen King. I think while he's fallen from, I had him really high. So 28's a lot lower than I would have hoped for him to end up. But I think he's a really good tackler, plays really well downhill, and does a lot of things well that Devon Witherspoon did in the physical aspect of football. And now I just think it's getting better at breaking on those kind of comeback routes, in breaking routes where he can kind of be slow to break with the receiver, allowing some separation. But I think this is a good shot for the Lions, who are kind of missing that kind of corner that they thought Jeff Okudah could have been a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and Jeff Okudah is now traded to the Falcons, right? So he's not even on roster. So yeah, I mean, bulking up that team. Again, most of these picks down at this range are their roster is pretty set. So you're like, oh man, what can just further them and make them better, push them to that Super Bowl contender if they don't win the Super Bowl, or keep them at that tier. So yeah, I like Kalen King here. I think he fell a little too far too, but he's going to be really good in the NFL. Also very productive corner. Hopefully, like you said, he doesn't turn out like Jeff Okudah. San Francisco 49ers pick up a huge win last night against the Eagles, kind of destroy them. You're looking at them as probably the best team in the NFC, because the Cowboys and the Eagles, the other two best teams in the NFC, they've both gotten destroyed by these guys. So this one's tough too, though. They have Trent Williams as a left tackle. They probably need some interior help. This is what leads me to take Graham Barton. Probably slide into an interior offensive line guy. We all know that with the Niners, they want to run the ball, right? Like they have Christian McCaffrey. They want to be productive running the ball. They have that wide zone scheme, the Kyle Shanahan one. So I think they need to get an offensive lineman to slide inside and help them bulk up that interior. And him and Trent Williams, if he slides into left guard, that's going to be a freaking brutal left side for teams to have to deal with. So I'm going to go with Graham Barton here for the Niners, sliding in, playing offensive guard.
Yeah, listen, I like the pick. And I think when you're drafting these guys that can slide inside, they don't forget how to play tackle. And that's kind of the upside to it is, and we looked at it with Peter Skoronski, who's played on an injured Titans offensive line. And while they haven't done it, the door is open for, if they need tackle help, bring them out. Because it's kind of, you can have more guys that can play guard, like your backup center can slide to guard. Tackle's really hard. So I think that it's a lot of depth help automatically, right? When you take a guy that you can profile at two positions rather than one, very helpful pick for San Francisco. Moving on to my team, I'm on a Patriots podcast, but I'm a Ravens fan. And so PFF's got 3 needs here. I got 4 needs for him. I think wide receiver went in that direction last draft. So I think, it's kind of taken a step in the right direction. I do like Rashad Bateman's future. Hasn't been what the Ravens wished he would be, but I do still think he's a good player. Zay Flowers obviously been a heck of a player so far. And then Aguilar and Odell could be on their way out. So I think they can use a receiver, but I'm kind of going to bite my tongue on that because I'm also a South Carolina fan and it's right in front of me. But I think they could get a receiver later on. And then I think you go O-line, D-line, and corner. Ultimately, I'm going to go corner because Marlon Humphrey, while he has been that really good corner for the Ravens for the last bunch of years, he's not getting any younger. Lost Marcus Peters, obviously. Not that was, huge loss, but they kind of need to replace that. Brandon Stevens has been really good for them. And I think it's just time to add that. I don't think you can ever have enough depth. And Humphrey went to Bama. I'm going to go Terry and Arnold from Alabama. Almost picked him earlier. I'm going to take him for the Ravens. It was that or Xavier Legette, who I'm a huge fan of. But I'm going to keep the South Carolina fan bias out of that and go Terry and Arnold, who I think can be the future corner number 1 for the Ravens. And I really like when teams take corner when they have a number 1 corner and can let them grow into that role, because it's really hard, as we've seen with the Washington Commanders this year, to draft a corner when you need a number 1 corner, just throw him out there. I don't think Forbes was the right pick. Took him over Gonzo and Joey Porter. and I think Gonzo's been unbelievable
Yes.
for y'all's Patriots.
Yes.
Can't wait to see him play again. Him and Judon, former Raven, went out this year. But I think, Pats have a lot of good young guys. And I really like what they did with corner. And I think that's kind of the mold. You don't throw the rookie corner in front of the number one receivers and say, go have fun. Arnold can be the 3 behind Stevens and Humphrey. Guys get hurt all the time on the back end, especially if you're a Ravens fan. So I like that pick.
Yeah, and this is a guy that I got to watch more of just because, right, Kool-Aid McKinstry, you got some other guys on that defense. I got to watch more of him. But, the Ravens got to have, like you mentioned, have some secondary health. And you see it with the Patriots. Gonzo's out. Jack Jones got cut. Marcus Jones is out now. We had to go trade back for J.C. Jackson. It happens to everyone. The back end gets so banged up, and it's always like the deep tissue, stuff like that holds them out. And so, yeah, I don't hate that pick at all. Last pick for me, I'm going to go with JC Latham for the Dolphins, right? They have Teron Armstead at the left tackle for them. There it is. And so they don't really need a left tackle. So let's go get a guy that's played mostly right tackle, right? JC Latham's played right tackle for Alabama. They have Austin Jackson over there from USC. I think if you can bulk up this offensive line and get a guy like JC Latham, who is just so athletic and has so much potential and upside, that's because you look at like their offense, right? Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, they don't need guys. They have Raheem Mostert. Devon Achane has been incredible when he's been healthy, right? And then the defensive line, they don't really need anyone with Christian Watkins, Raekwon Davis. Jalen Phillips will come back. You could take a linebacker, but I just don't think they take a linebacker in the first round. And their secondary with Xavier Howard, Jalen Ramsey, and Javon Holland is set. So I think they go bulk up this offensive line. We all know the injury history with Tua and his concussions. They got to protect him, and they've done a good job so far this year. Let's go get JC Latham for them. Let him be that right tackle, opposite of Teron Armstrong.
So I really like that pick. And I think Latham kind of belongs kind of in this back half of the first round as opposed to maybe the front half. I think I have concerns about, the penalties, and then sometimes he just, misses with the hand placement. I think he's got a ways to go, but I still think that he can be a really good player, and Miami, I think, is going to make it easier for him. They get the ball out quick, like to run the ball wide side. He's a big player, so he can get that done easily. And so I do really like that pick. And then last pick of the draft, Eagles here. I think, wide receiver is a big need, but I don't think they need to take it in the first round. I think they can get a guy like, I'm a big fan of Ladd McConkey. I think they can get a guy like him in the second round because they need a number 3, right? I think Devontae Smith is going to get a contract. And I'm not taking Xavier Legette because that's just A.J. Brown next to A.J. Brown in terms of build. So I think they can wait on a receiver. I'm going to go with a safety here. We haven't taken a safety off the board. And I think you can go with a guy that's going to play very downhill, has really good ball skills, because I think Philly could use some help on the back end, whether it's corner, whether it's safety. I'm going to go with Cameron Kinchins. He's my number 1 safety. Tyler Nubin is really close. He's a really good player, but I like the way that Kinchins profiles better as a guy that can, help in the box as well. And so that's my pick for Philly. And I think they could, it's a luxury pick, man, but I think that's a spot that they could really use some help in.
All right. I thought you were going to take Kamari Lassiter. They got to go with the Georgia guy. Come on. They've done it the last 5 years. No, I like Cameron Kitchens. Again, he's a ball hawking safety. I think that, again, these last 4 picks, right? The Niners, Ravens, Dolphins, Eagles have all felt, and then you can throw in the Cowboys and Lions too. They've just felt like their roster is pretty complete, right? They're just looking for 1 or 2 more guys, and maybe that doesn't come by way of the draft, but free agency. Those picks have just felt like luxury picks. And so I've loved all those picks. I think Cameron Kitchens is a ball hawking guy. And, he's going to be able to make a huge impact for that Eagles defense. And it's one of the best in the league. So I like this draft. I'm going to recap it here real quick. At the top, we had the Bears taking Caleb Williams, Patriots, Drake May, Cardinals, Marvin Harrison Jr., Washington, Olu Fashanu, Chicago again at 5, Leatu Latu, the Jets, Joel Alt, the Giants, Bo Nix, the Titans, Malik Neighbors, the Saints, Jared Verse, Tampa Bay at 10, Brock Bowers, Las Vegas, Kool-Aid McKinstry, the Chargers, Jerzon Newton, the Bengals, Tylese Fuaga, the Bills take Rome Odunze, The Broncos take Chop Robinson. The Seahawks take Braylon Trice. The Rams take Amarius Mims. The Cardinals, again from Houston, take Cooper DeJean. The Falcons take Jaden Daniels. Packers, Patrick Paul. The Vikings take Michael Penix Jr. The Colts take Nate Wiggins. The Steelers take Emeka Ibuka. The Texans from the Browns take Troy Fontenot. The Chiefs get a luxury pick here with Keon Coleman. Jaguars take Dallas Turner. Cowboys A.D. Mitchell. The Lions, Kalen King. The San Francisco 49ers, Graham Barton. The Ravens take Terrion Arnold. The Dolphins, J.C. Latham. And then the last pick, the Eagles take Cameron Kitchens. I thought it was a great draft, man. I really enjoyed doing it with you. Hope you had fun with doing it too.
Had a blast, man. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Yeah, guys, again, follow him. It's NFL Draft Geek _ on Instagram, right? I said that right. Yep.
Yes.
NFL Draft Geek _ follow him. He's going to have more news about, and all things college football, scouting reports, stuff like that. Just a little more in depth of all the prospects than what we'll do. So, appreciate you coming on. Again, go follow him on Instagram. Appreciate guys tuning in. Let us know what you think, what you change with any pick. And we appreciate you coming on, man. Hope we'll have you come on again, closer, do a little bit more stuff. So appreciate you.
Would love to.
Yeah, no problem. Well, thank you guys so much. And we will talk to you guys later.